We're in the studio. It's me, Mark, and Kurt today. Chuck's out at lunch,
So no politics today.
no politics today.
Country's in focus. Election year 2024.
So we had a busy week this week. We had our Empower conference, which was really good.
Yeah, break it down for us, bro.
Yeah, I think kind of my takeaways from it are, one, the sentiment around, let's bifurcate it between Bitcoin mining and high performance computing like AI. There were a lot of EMPs there. Like one of my guys that's invested in DW came, he's got 6 million cubic feet of gas per day. He's like, man, I'm getting negative 70 cents per MCF. He's like, I'm looking for alternatives. And he said that he got so much information from Empower. He's like, I'm looking at this new asset that I'm developing. And he's like, this opens up my mind to how I should look at that asset and really, might be able to extract value out of it. And so just the sentiment around EMPs, like actually looking at Bitcoin mining as a legitimate infrastructure play. You're starting to see the tide turn there. And then lots of the Bitcoin miners talking about AI. It's interesting to hear what's happening in the AI space.
And give us sum it up for us. What do you think they're thinking about? What is happening? What do you see the next few years?
So what you see with like some of the public Bitcoin miners are getting into the AI space, and I think that it makes sense for them. They've got large infrastructure, these large on-grid mines that have large power purchase agreements, and so it makes sense for them to have these GPU clusters out there.
But they'd have to rip out some of their mining.
That's the problem, is that like the
different equipment.
The computers that you use for Bitcoin mining are ASICs, and they're specifically for Bitcoin mining. And so it's not like you can use that equipment, but you can use the infrastructure and the electricity, right? And so I don't think that this will be a model for like small independent oil and gas producers to run GPUs and Bitcoin miners simultaneously, but it'll be interesting to see what some of these larger players do, because I do think that they'll have some optionality in doing both of them.
I mean, this is interesting. Bitcoin was sort of that's the one purpose for stranded energy that's being wasted. Mm-hmm. Like let's run some Bitcoin mining. But what's interesting is we've talked about AI so much.
Yeah.
Like AI is dying for more capacity.
Yeah.
Why not put capacity out where energy's super cheap?
I think what we're going to have to dive into, I was talking to someone on Twitter about this the other day, was the thing about Bitcoin mining is that it's extremely flexible and dispatchable load. I mean, you can turn off the miners on a second's notice. On AI.
But as a miner, you don't want to be turned off because you're losing money.
No, not necessarily, because if you participate in the ERCOT ancillary program, they pay you for that. And so there's actually, it's pretty lucrative to actually shut off. But what we need to dive into further, and I was talking to someone on Twitter about this the other day that's a machine learning expert, is will GPUs be able to be flexible on that level as well? Like, will someone want their GPU clusters turning off while a model's being trained? Or is there flexibility to switch to other GPU clusters? And so I think that remains to be unseen. We'll have to get some experts in here sometime to kind of walk us through that. But, will these GPU clusters?
It's interesting because I just got pitched this morning, because I always take these business, like people looking for money. There's this team out of Dublin, they're Italians, that have developed a platform to basically redistribute load around to multiple sources. Mm-hmm. So let's say that I'm primarily running off, Amazon's, data cluster, but I can find cheaper. It's really cool that technology is, people are really designing new applications and new ideas to basically service this capability of having
it comes
flexible load.
And it's like, it's redundancy with the cloud computing too, right? Like the way I think about it is, I kind of have this vision. I don't know if we'll ever get here, but what we're doing with our language models on Collide, it's like, man, it'd be awesome if someday, if we ever had our own foundational model and I have a bunch of H100 GPUs fired up off of nat gas, like off grid, I'm not dependent on Azure and AWS. But it's like, even, doing that, it's like, okay, you can have on-prem servers, but then you have redundancy. If on-prem goes down, you have backup on AWS, and that's all managed by software, right? So it is kind of cool. I think what's also cool is like the inflection point of like hardware is becoming cool again, and like hardware and software. And so
what is the summary of Empower? What did you learn this year, and what is sort of the future of Empower? I want to get those takes.
Yeah, I actually didn't even want to do Empower moving forward. Like, it's such a big lift for DW, like from an operational perspective.
Events suck, bro.
It takes a lot of work, man, and it's super stressful. And within an hour of Empower going, I sent a message to our team. I said, hey, we have to keep doing Empower. Like, I saw how important it is for the people that were there. And also, if you look at like just where we're in the curve of high performance computing, I mean, we've been doing Empower for 3 years. It's like we're early in the game, and this only is going to continue to grow.
You got some big names this year.
Speaking of early, one example that I think is encouraging for the smaller kind of old school producers and thinking about creative ways, you had Amalgamated Sludge there, Dan Morrison. He's been doing this on his own.
Dan's a smart dude.
In New Mexico. Yeah, I met him years ago. Was running some assets at Exxon, but he's doing it in New Mexico. He's got optionality built into his operation where he's mining at a fairly small scale, but he also has optionality from his gas production. He's got a gas plant on site. He's got an interconnect close by, and I think has been out in front of this. In fact, he characterized it, I think, in one comment I heard, that this is the industry, the E&P industry's awareness of what is possible here reminds him of, Wolfcamp Horizontal from 2010, 2011.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the hub or the network or the platform of Empower is important.
Yeah.
Early in this,
I agree.
What's coming, I think.
I agree.
And
I think what was cool about this year is that we had a lot more, I'd say, meat on the bone in terms of like presentations. Like, I'm looking at this presentation from 360 Mining, and you can go find this. I posted this slide in Collide. So if you go to Collide, go to my profile, you can see it. I need to go post the entire presentation because this is only one slide, so it doesn't have the sensitivities, but it's comparing traditional midstream connection to Bitcoin mining. And so with the pipeline CapEx to access the market, it's 500,000. Bitcoin mining, you're looking at 2 million. So, there's a lot more in CapEx for Bitcoin mining with your generators and computers, things of that nature. But traditional midstream, you're getting $1.50 per MCF. Bitcoin mining, you're getting $20 per MCF. Goes through the realized gas price. After all your fees in midstream, you're realizing $1 per MCF. Bitcoin mining, you're realizing $18. And then realized profit per MCF in the midstream is $0. And Bitcoin mining is $17.
Wow.
Obviously, lots of variables and sensitivities.
Is that Collide Pro giving you that data?
It's in.
Now it's in Collide Pro.
It's in Collide Pro now.
Damn, I love, dude.
He had the chip installed.
Yeah, I'm on Neuralink. I got Collide Pro in my
brain.
Dude,
speaking of Neuralink, interesting you said that, but a guy that first human patient of Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's brain computer company, said he used the wireless implant to stay up all night playing Civilization 6.
Yeah, we talked about this. We talked about this on last week's BDE. First off, I think it's extremely base that the first use case of Neuralink is staying up all night playing video games. Yeah, I love it. Makes so much sense.
It's so true. Who do you think's first in line? It's like, how do I get ahead?
Yeah. It's, kind of like bringing that back to like Bitcoin. It's like the first, like some of the richest people off of Bitcoin were all poker players, online poker players.
Really?
Yeah, because they needed a medium to be able to transact on. And so they use Bitcoin. And so when you look at like early adopters of these technologies, it's usually gamers and, really just kind of people that are digitally native.
I was reading like, Blink, Sam Altman's WorldCoin.
Yeah.
Hit another roadblock after Portuguese authorities ordered it to stop collecting proof of personhood. The eye-scanning orb and token have forced growing opposition to over privacy concerns. I mean, it's sort of flying in the face of what Bitcoin is all about.
Yeah, for sure. Worldcoin's weird.
It's a strange
I actually
thing.
thought that was like a scam the first time I
But
saw it.
Neuralink isn't a scam. I mean, you have a chip in you.
I think
tracks you.
I think Neuralink's cool as shit, and I think that it's the next step of evolution for humans.
Where are you going to put it?
Ultimately, where am I going to put mine?
Where does it go?
It goes in your brain.
But where in your brain?
I don't think you have an optionality to like where to
No,
put
no,
it.
no, no, but
You get
like, like
you get
do
right
to
side
show
or
it?
left side?
like
Yeah.
which lobe
Should have
I'm
some
putting
kind
it
of
in, I don't
switch.
know.
You could be creative than you can be.
Yeah,
That's right.
but I mean, really, like this is you think about the rise of AI, and I mean, like there is a case that hey, AI could destroy us someday.
Listen
but
to the Rogan Elon from Halloween last year.
I need to. I haven't listened to that yet. So, anyways, we have a lot that we talked about on Neuralink, and also the rise of humanoid robots and like energy consumption. We need to go do a deep dive episode on all of that.
Love that.
sometime.
Let's go. I'm in.
But anyways, Mark, we got our numbers guy back today. Mark and Sal.
What the hell happened in the energy markets?
I just thought we'd hit a little crude oil update.
Yeah.
Since you pointed out it was fairly light
Give it
across
to
the
us.
board, but for energy news. But one thing that caught my eye is that March demand for Asia was particularly strong relative to January, February. In fact, I think combined China and India were up over 1 million barrels a day versus January. And then when you couple that with what the EIA short-term outlook is saying and what has happened recently in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, with Ukraine through its drone strikes taking off about 1 million barrels a day of Russian refining capacity, I think you have some scramble out there in the market for refined product imports and crude oil imports into Asia. And there's another blurb out there today that the Saudis are raising their official selling price by 20 cents into Asia for August.
Yeah, I saw that. What's your read?
Well, I think the combination of tighter supply and some early green shoots, particularly related to Chinese industrial related demand. And if you look at the U.S., which grew last year, 2023, way more than I think early expectations coming into the year were. The EIA has 400,000 barrels a day of growth versus over 1 million last year for U.S. oil production. They keep that growth number flat in 2025, so 400,000 barrels a day growth this year, 400,000 barrels a day next year. And the reason they're not more aggressive is they see a slight decline in they use a scenario-based price forecast or price prediction, price deck. And so they see slightly declining rig count, but that's somewhat offset by improved per well productivity, something we've talked about which has been a theme in the consolidation transactions that we've seen here recently. So, and part of this, just real quick, there's about 800,000 barrels a day of refining capacity that comes offline, I believe mostly in India, for seasonal maintenance.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you see anything about the EIA's oil production, oil inventory? Josh Young was talking to me about it at the Houston Open a couple of days ago. He said there was some discrepancy in numbers. I'm butchering this right now. I should have came more prepared. I should have looked it up. I was just curious if you saw anything on that.
I did, and I did look at what they're projecting for, what the EIA is projecting for stock draws for the quarterly over the year, and there's a pretty strong, I think, approaching high several 100,000 barrels a day in the first quarter.
Okay.
Oh, and one other piece that was in there, at least in the Reuters piece, was Nigeria and Iraq are particularly notable since they came in light with their production. That's in addition to the voluntary OPEC plus cuts that will remain in place until the end of June at least.
So what's this? I mean, what does all of this mean in the short term for you?
Well, I think there's always the political risk of what we've talked about as well, this being a U.S. presidential election year.
That's what I'm saying. We have a lot coming.
Arm twisting. You've got 2.5 million barrels a day offline on paper as it relates to those cuts. Are you going to look out into the third and fourth quarter of 2024 and suggest that you're going to have a high confidence that some of that doesn't start to leak. I mean, crude's, I just looked at, it's knocking on 84
Yeah, we're at
a barrel
80,
TI.
84 right now. That's what I'm curious is like coming into election season.
Yeah, what's your prediction? What do you think is going to happen?
I just think there's some unquantifiable risk out there that we're gonna see some pressures to get. I mean, I paid $4 a gallon for the first time in a long time.
That's what I was just curious about because like I don't hear anyone like really talking about gas prices right now or anything. So it seems like public sentiment is decent where commodity prices are. So it's, does the Biden administration look at it and say, oh, we need to get gas prices down going into?
I mean, that's a lever that actually makes a difference. So absolutely, especially with all the diesel prices. I mean, that's sort of how the country runs, right?
Yeah.
Certainly don't have the SPR lever.
Right.
Yeah, kind of exhausted,
For a while.
right?
That's
Yeah,
true.
so-
Yeah. So it's like, what levers do you have to pull as the
I just
administration?
think there's, some level of elevated political risk to the downside from here. And as it becomes more of a headline issue.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And something that's going to be much more hotly debated. I think if this tightness continues to persist and we see
Right.
pretty significant inventory draws going into the summer. And we
So-
have things like supply chain disruptions, although it's not significantly related to crude and products, but you had the bridge tragedy last week.
Yeah.
And moving things around, as we know, can cause some upset in the market as well.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to know, what kind of butterfly effect that has for, shipping and transport and logistics with that bridge going down. I saw a report that said that it was going to take 10 years to rebuild that, which is just fucking insane.
You're
Like,
kidding me.
10
really?
years. Which, don't get me wrong, big bridge, but
Now, wouldn't you like to be the
construction company.
Yeah,
that's
the
doing
construction
that,
company
10
that wins
years,
that
yeah.
deal.
It's just kind of
Dang.
embarrassing how
So,
long it takes to
I
rebuild
saw a piece on describing exactly when it was. Kudos to the harbor pilot who was on the bridge, and he could have done a number of things, but critically, with all the power loss, he pulled out his cell phone and called the authorities, and that was, if he'd have waited 60 to 90 seconds longer, he wouldn't have been able to relay the communication they needed to shut down the bridge.
Really?
Yeah, and it could have been a lot worse.
That's
We're
when I
talking
first saw
about
the
splitting
video.
hairs in terms of
When I first saw the video, like I noticed that there was no traffic because there was noticeable traffic on it at the beginning.
Right. And then
even
it
at
was-
And
one-
it didn't
1:30 in the morning.
resonate with me as I watched the video the first time that they were able to shut the bridge down because I was just like, man, that's so lucky that there was no traffic on there. But
apparently
yeah,
the quick
pretty heroic
the
effort
quick
to get
thinking to
traffic on
use
there.
his cell phone because of other electronics and comms being down
Yeah,
or sporadic. And there were, there's a checklist of things you go through on board.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
he said the most important thing is to get word to shut down the bridge. And that was
Yeah.
a split second decision.
Impressive.
Probably saved a lot of lives.
yeah, good on them. So speaking of political and oil and gas risk, we had the president of Guyana on BBC
Dude.
News.
This has been
Yeah.
circulating. It's good.
It's been circulating, and I'm like, this dude's my hero. Like, we need to get him on BDE sometime because this guy just absolutely goes off. Mark, you want to kind of lay out the lay of the land for anyone that didn't see this?
Yeah, it was an interview. And if you haven't seen it, then
We'll put a link to the video.
then
Yeah,
you
we
don't
got to.
you don't know what the internet is. But so it was a sit down interview with Irfan Ali, BBC reporter Stephen Sakur, who starts the interview off, or at least this clip. I haven't seen the full interview. I don't know if it shut down after this exchange, but basically saying that Guyana is going to generate $150 billion worth of crude oil and I guess secondarily natural gas. But that also translates to, in their estimate, BBC's estimate, of 2 billion tons of carbon emissions. And then he further gets more aggressive by pointing the finger and saying, what gives you the right to essentially pollute like this?
Yeah.
The trade-off between massive economic and prosperity inflection for a historically poor country in the global south, right?
I think this BBC reporter just absolutely screwed up what gives you the right, and boom.
So the substance of the tone was great. The tension was fantastic. It was great entertainment, but really the substance of President Ali's rebuttal and counter lecture is what it turned into. Was, look, we have done as a country a great job of maintaining our biodiversity in the last 50 years, where the world has seen his estimate of a 60% reduction over the last 50 years or an increase in deforestation. And against that 2 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions that the BBC reporter said would come from that $150 billion worth of prosperity for Guyana, the carbon sink in Guyana's forests is estimated at 19.5 gigatons.
Amazing.
So somebody else's turn to provide the carbon sink, for which
he
points out they've not been paid.
He called out what it is, Western hypocrisy, which we talk about this on the show all the time.
I mean, clearly he came ready though with this data too.
No, he came. Yeah,
maybe it's always like he just knows it, but that was
he might just
impressive.
know it because obviously he's very passionate about it, and also this dude just embarrasses the presidents that we've had as late. Young guy in his 40s and just very articulate, prepared with facts, and has the backbone to stand up for what he believes in. But this Western hypocrisy is what we've talked about on this show for years now, and he's saying, you guys, the UK has decreased biodiversity, led deforestation in the industrial age, and now you're telling us that we can't extract resources in our own country.
Yeah, and you're putting up all these, wind farms, solar farms, which I think people in general are fans of, maybe not.
Yeah,
but they're knocking down their diversity. They're actually hurting the nature that is the beautiful landscape of the UK.
Yeah,
to put up all these man-made things, and then they're judging these third world countries, and it's actually quite interesting the fact that Guyana has actually preserved these. What was the size of the acreage that they've actually?
The size of the UK or size of England and Scotland
combined.
The area of England and Scotland.
They've preserved forest land.
That's where the 60% deforestation context is. It's not globally. It's
just
in the UK.
Quick Google search is that Guyana's forest size is 18.5 million.
I thought it was 18 million
hectares.
Hectares. Yeah. So
it's one. That's one conversion I never have on the.
Yeah,
the hectares.
The what's interesting about this though is I would love to go look up Guyana's imports and exports, because typically countries like this, are chopping down their forest and using the resource, right? And so the fact that they've maintained this, and just his point of he's like, y'all don't pay us for that. Like this dude is attacking the heart of the entire conversation of
not only is there,
you want to put a price on carbon. You want to put a price on carbon, then we have this forest and you pay us for it. The world pays us for it.
Yeah. There's
not only is UK deforestation at issue, but if you recall a few weeks ago, we talked about kind of the wood pellet alternative accounting, and the story was was about a clear cutting of a Canadian old growth forest and getting credits for replacing that harvested, very mature carbon sink with new trees, which I'm not a biochemist, but replacing the carbon sink capacity of old growth forest has got to be a centuries in the making from new growth to full maturity.
No, that's one of the biggest challenges of looking at all these sort of carbon deals, and is unlike gold, diamonds, currency, which there's agreement amongst valuation, it's really hard to say that the carbon credits coming off this area is worth this. And it's really hard to value that. It's really hard to value, like, well, what kind of trees were it? What's happened? You have to really understand the terroir and what's been happening there to even think about it. And there's no sort of constancy around the world
no standards.
Zero standards, but
zero standard.
Can we even come to an agreement about what it's worth?
In many cases,
and what it does.
Zero quantification.
Absolutely. Like, what is Guyana's 18 million hectares of forest worth
as a carbon sink?
As a carbon sink.
Yeah. Or
how do you measure that?
What is that worth in an energy crunch to Europeans who need to burn wood pellets? Would you rather us harvest and export our forest in Guyana for use in converted power generation?
What's that worth to Ireland that's shutting down their refinery? Is it shutting their refinery and saying no to the LNG import facility?
That's the only thing that could have been added to the salt in the wound on this interview was if he turned around on the BBC guy and it's like, what gives you the right to cut down forests in the United States, take that carbon sink and burn it and release that CO2? Like, just that BBC reporter obviously came in and was just not prepared for
fire.
what he was about to get served. And I love it.
I have another characterization that I'll keep to myself, but
why not? This is a podcast. We can say whatever we want.
Is it something?
Look,
is it something against people in the UK?
No, it was just
Chuck's GF might be upset, so be careful.
I found it to be,
but she likes Mark.
I know. She thinks.
I just think
I don't know why she likes Mark out of.
She's like, is Mark going to be there?
Mark keeps trying to give a point. We're just
keep talking. We'll get on to the next topic.
All right, what's your point, Mark?
I think you use the term condescending. I just think there was a kind of a palpable arrogance in
100%
in opening with that.
Yeah.
And really what the issue is on the ground, and not only Guyana, but others that have vast natural resource potential and wealth.
Right.
And what it means for those countries that are democratically governed, and the prosperity and the explosive growth in GDP this is going to create for Guyana.
I think also is a little bit disrespectful. Like, do you think that BBC reporter would interrupt Joe, Biden or Putin or
there
any
used
other
to be
president like that? Like,
heads of state, there used to be sort of a unwritten rule of respect.
Yeah.
But that was, in some ways, when you watch the video, is almost attacking. What gives you the right? And he's almost saying is like, oh, because it's a third world country. Because
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at, is that it just seemed very disrespectful and that you're below us. And I just think it comes back to, is like, look, you have Guyana, which is a developing nation, and they have this incredible oil and gas resource. Do you think they give a fuck about your condescending efforts of, oh, what gives you the right? No, they want to live a better life.
I wonder what the sort of the standard of living of the 818,000 resident or people that live in Guyana, versus the UK.
The other reality here is, and Arjun Murthy has pointed out several times when we're going through this, okay, are we going to allow or embrace more cleaner barrels production growth in places like Canada and the US, where we have defined regulations, et cetera, and we're using, I would argue, in exploration and production and refining and processing and midstream, some of the best technology available, and trying to objectively and specifically account for the emissions footprint of operations. You've got arguably the best operator in the world of this type of a project in Exxon out in front. Maybe Chevron joins them, maybe they don't, depending on the outcome of the arbitration on the Hess deal. But you have the most responsible operators who are acutely aware of the spotlight that's on them from an ESG standpoint, from doing what's right, from a safety and environmental standpoint. Consider that Exxon, 1989, had a global event in the form of the Valdez oil spill I guarantee you there is a tremendous system in place to deal with. I mean, they're out in 5,000 feet of water. Okay. And there are currents that, in the event of a spill, are going to potentially impact a lot more than just the shorelines of Guyana. So you want that risk management, sophisticated risk management operator in place leading the development of these resources.
I also think that this may have some weird implications. You know, we talked on the show last week or the week before about the Chevron Hess deal and Exxon suing them. And now, you know, it just seems like the president of Guyana's got some more political clout after this week, you know, coming up on stage like that. And so wonder what kind of implications.
Ready to fight, man.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of implications that might have on bringing attention to.
I'm sure it'll make the topic list before the end of the year again.
Yeah. But I'm happy for him. Like, I'm like, dude, stand up for yourself, develop your country.
Absolutely.
Man, seems like, you know, I don't know much about the guy outside of that interview,
respectful debate.
But, you know, a couple of years ago, I was talking to one of my really good friends, Nee, and Nee is from Nigeria, and he's really smart guy. And he's like, man, Exxon should be getting digital Wildcatters to go over to Guyana just every year, make a video, document the prosperity that this deal is going to bring to Guyana. He's like, the only reason that kids like me got to go to school is because of oil and gas. And so you just look at it through that lens.
Great
of
point.
What it means for the people of these countries, and some piece of shit BBC journalist to get on there and be condescending like that pisses me off. So anyways, really, I'm a big fan of this dude now. Like, big fan.
Let's get him on the show.
We should, 100%.
I bet he'd come. He knows about digital Wildcatters.
He'll get in a
He
Twitter
obviously knows
DM
about us.
like Chuck is with Andreessen.
That's right. That's right.
I'll find a way to get him on.
Hey, speaking of, what's going on in Sweden, Mark?
Well, there's a series of pieces out since December, at least as far as I look back. But most recently, there was a commentary on Sweden's largest wind power provider facing pretty imminent bankruptcy threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's the largest wind farm in Sweden, 179 wind turbines, and it's Chinese owned. Mark Bigden Et. They have power contracts with Hydro that run until 2040, and they're selling every electron today at a loss. And so, just to put some numbers on it, they've accumulated 220 million euros in losses in the last 3 years, while at the same time their debt burden has grown to 530 million euros. And so what's the maneuverability around this? You know, I want to see these things work. I think every day when I wake up and I see the ceiling fan turning, I don't care where the electrons come from. Right. But
as long as it's cheap and reliable,
this kind of leverage march can't sustain itself. And, you know, unfortunately the counterparty, the major counterparty in the form of Hydro, not surprisingly, has no interest in renegotiating those contracts.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, why would you? But the problem is, if they shut down, what happens to Hydro? Where are they gonna source their cheap
Don't know
energy?
what the substitutes are, the pivots. If I think Sweden's been one of the Scandinavian countries that is on the path to decommission nuclear.
Right. Well, Hydro is probably Norsk Hydro. I'm assuming it's the Norwegian-based company that I've actually sat on a board with a hydro company that also invested. Most of their energy is actually hydro. It's actually waterfalls. That's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Did y'all see this video I posted this morning? New York Times did this video on New York City's steam system.
No.
I'll be honest.
Steam?
Yeah. The city has this entire steam system that powers the city. And it's what allowed New York City to be what New York City is and have the density. And I had no idea that this was honestly, I had no idea that this was a thing. And so, anyways, New York Times, as much as I don't like them on certain things, did this really good video showing the steam operations and the underground. You have these big steam generators, and then you have pipes running all around the city. And the steam, it heats things, it does cooling.
Have you ever lived in an apartment with a radiator?
I haven't. but
you only touch it once.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I've always been blessed to have electric HVAC units and natural gas piped in my house. But I posted about this as like, pretty fascinating video on the New York City steam system. And then one of my buddies, Duncan Campbell, he lives up in New York City, and he responded. He said, yeah, the New York district steam system sucks, and it's an economic death spiral. Everyone gets off of it to make their own if they can. Only buildings that don't have space for a boiler or some other logistical issue stay on the system. It's quite inefficient as it doesn't return condensate, and it leaks everywhere, and it's super costly to maintain. I used to work for the system in Philly, same issues. It's what inspired me to do distributed energy resources. And then he followed up with a second comment that said, Natty killed steam. And so anyways, I thought the video was super interesting. But it sounds like—
Are we going to link to it?
Yeah, we'll drop a link to this. We'll get Jacob to drop a link or show a clip of the video. But
awesome.
Regardless of just like historic, energy systems, and seeing how cities were built. I mean, it's pretty cool to see. And now it actually makes so much sense now. Like when you see steam coming out of the streets of New York, like I was there with my kids in December. They're like, why is steam coming out? And like, I didn't know.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I didn't even go look up to see like, why is there steam coming out? But anyways, go check it out. It's
adds to the aromatics.
Dude, I've got to be.
They did that.
Yeah.
They had this experiment on Fifth Avenue for Christmas, and they were pumping Christmas scent throughout the streets. And it's like, what is that? Like cinnamon and firewood and trash and sewage.
Add some scent in there, but it's natural scent.
Just overpowering the weed smell.
Yeah.
All right, here's the deal. Last weekend was Easter, so happy Easter to all those that celebrated and observed it. But it was also the Texas Children's Houston Open.
Yeah.
Golf tournament, professional golf tournament. And Digital Wildcatters had a booth.
Yeah.
PGA Tour.
Now, I took my wife down to the event.
Did you go to our tent?
Well, shit, dude. I got into the Texas Children's tent. I got in the United tent. I got into most tents. The one tent I could not get into because it was sold out or too exclusive for me was Digital Wildcatters.
Damn. You're a podcaster and you didn't even
I'm
get
like,
invited.
I couldn't even
What
get
day
in.
was this? What day was this?
Friday. Friday.
So I don't know, man. I don't know if I just got riz, but on Saturday and Sunday, I
was like, I can get into any tent.
I talked the staff into letting me bring extra people in. So
as a guy who's actually been behind the ropes of most PGA Tour events, I couldn't get into my own Digital Wildcatters booth. They're like, sorry, bro. I was like,
had to give my ticket back. I should have just given it to you.
Damn, man.
Mine
and now
was
I'm
next-
looking,
mine
now
was
I'm
for
looking
Sunday.
at, and now I'm like, man, I'm not going to get into this one because I see that the countdown started to Digital Wildcatters Crawfish Boil.
yeah, you
And
want to go
it's
to that?
April 27th. No, limited to 400 people. And it's where? Super secret location. Like, I can see myself. I'm going to be number 401. I'm going to show up and be like, sorry, bro.
I've got
It's
a
not at
spot
the
for you,
Richmond
man.
House this year?
It's not at the Richmond House.
I don't
no.
wear a vest. I mean, what's up, dude?
I've got
I'm
you.
not a finance bro.
One, I'm upset that you didn't get into the DW tent. I would have made that happen for
They're
sure.
all like throwing stuff at us, you know.
But we had no. So
peasants.
let me tell you my experience because I've never watched a round of golf in my life, and to be honest, I think golf's kind of boring. But I really enjoyed my 2 days there at the Open, and
Dude,
now I'm
awesome.
like, I'm gonna go play golf. I'm like, that actually looks fun. Seems like a good time. So maybe you can take me for my first time to play golf.
We got it. It's
Well,
done.
when you play, you'll appreciate seeing it up close. And
No,
the-
100%.
and the
Dude,
precision is
I was
unreal.
I was talking to this about with the guys because I'm like, I'm watching them. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. And I was like, this is the equivalent. Like, no one respects UFC fighters because like they have no idea how talented and technical those guys are. It's like, and then you go with one and you're like, oh shit, like you're just lost. I was like, that's how it is for me watching professional golfers.
Dude,
So
I'm
go out
like,
there.
really? Like, no one respects, like, what do you do? MMA? Really?
Yeah, but some interesting let me get some interesting takeaways from my conversations at the tents because I had people from Exxon, SM Energy from Precision Drilling, just go down Oxy, go down the list, and lots of interesting conversations. One, the people are talking about AI a lot, lots of excitement around that, hearing how people are using Microsoft, Azure AI and things of this nature. Had lots of conversations between some of the service companies on automation on drilling rigs. And I think that if you look at the evolution of drilling rigs, when I started drilling in 2010, that wasn't that long ago, still using Kelly rotary rigs. Like you could look at a picture of my rig
chains
in 2010, didn't look too much different from a rig in the 30s, 40s. I mean, yeah, you had a Kelly, you had a cat head, you had chains, you had tongs, and boom, all of a sudden top drives come out, iron roughnecks with ST80s. I mean, hydraulic pipe arms, just all kinds of crazy shit. And now I think what we're going to see with the automation of drilling, and then you start combining that with AI, it's like, it's not too crazy to think that in 10, 15 years, we have fully automated AI drilling rigs that can drill and take people out of the danger zones of rigs and, allow them to monitor systems instead. So anyways,
I did like your one, it's been a few weeks ago, where you said this would be much better than the dead man line with the chute.
Oh, yeah. We should have Jacob pull up that video because SpaceX posted a video of their escape chute from rocket launching derricks if there was a fire. And essentially you have this cable that goes down and then the chute opens up and you slide down the chute. And the way
you got to post that, man.
Yeah, the way it works on drilling rigs is you have what's called a Geronimo line, and it's a cable, and you have this the steel handlebar that you hold on to, or
it's
you
like
sit
zip
on.
lining.
It's like zip lining, except it's really fucking sketchy,
nerve-wracking.
And if the rig's burning down, you gotta get on this thing and
fast.
You zip down. But this chute looked so much more safe and practical. And people's questions were like, "Oh, was it fire resistant?" I'm like, it was made for escaping a rocket explosion on a rig.
Imagine,
I imagine it's fire resistant. But I actually think that if someone goes and looks into that, there may be a potential business there to sell and service those things. So
that's wild.
Yeah, but that's what I love too, is like, if you look at like the intersection of the space industry and defense and oil and gas, there's so many things that you can take from each of those and apply them. So
call it the slap shoot.
There you
Dude,
go.
that's badass.
That's good.
Let's do it.
The slap shoot. We have anything else on the docket? We got four more minutes for today's show.
Yeah, I had one item. I'm not going to mention the airline because I don't want.
We'll get to that next week. And airlines always are like, we always beat them down, man.
But this was a first, and I estimate, but in my life I've flown north of 2 million miles. And long ago,
can we guess the airline?
No,
it's United.
Long ago, I
thank you, United, for the booth
stopped
access
paying rapt attention to the PA announcements, but that's not a PSA for safety, for air passenger safety. Listen to the PA. Chamber of Commerce Day, leave the gate, stop on the ramp. Announcement is, well, this aircraft was designated for a much longer route, and instead of going back to the gate and lightering some fluid, we're just going to sit here and burn off 2,000 pounds of jet.
And how long does that take?
It took a few minutes. And so
I'd
never been aware of this.
Or the jets just like,
that's what I'm saying. They just thought
probably happened. They sit in a higher idle and just lighten the load.
Just burn fuel.
Yeah. So jet fuel is about 7 pounds per gallon and contains about 21 pounds of CO2 per gallon. So that's about 6,000 pounds of CO2 flared.
Damn, man. They have to pay for that?
Right.
Do they have to pay for that?
It's already paid for.
Why did they burn it off again?
Lighten the load.
The plane is too heavy?
Yeah.
Because you can't come in for a landing fully fueled because it's heavy and it's dangerous, right?
So I tried to get this flight attendant to explain this logic to me once, because we had to sit out on at the gate because they had to move baggage from the bottom, from the cargo
Around.
to the top. And I was like, why? And like, because it's too heavy. I'm like, but the weight stays the same on the plane.
It does.
The weight,
Just the bottom heavy.
like, trust me, I understand like the weight requirements. I mean, this is like really, like they're really particular about this on offshore helicopter flights to offshore rigs. I mean, you have to weigh yourself, you have to weigh your bag, and then they have to shift around the load. But I was like, on a plane, I was like, explain the logic, and she couldn't. She's getting a little bit upset with me. But
I'll tell a little helicopter story from my offshore days.
yeah, we got 2 minutes.
Came in.
He's got a hard stop.
Had to come in early on a Saturday. My rotation day was Tuesday, but came in early for BOP school. And the field helicopter, which is a little Bell 206, they decided to shove some extra wellhead equipment. The gray hand was out there, so we put all these gray tools in the cargo, and they're pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Dude, if there's space, just put it in, and no one cares.
Yeah, the helicopter pilot said, we're going to have to pick up some speed. And the way we're going to do this is a big platform rig.
To land?
Pretty high off the water. No,
To take off.
To get airborne. So we hopped this helicopter. This was years ago. So
No way.
hopped this helicopter to the edge of the deck, and we're down in a steep dive toward the Gulf.
And you're like, holy shit.
And I'm a snakeophobe, and it's pretty early in the morning, and helicopter pilots like to play jokes. So I'm sitting front left side. He's on the right side. And he said, "What's that down there between your feet?" And he'd put a plastic snake. So my heart rate was already up. And then when we dove off the side, it was...
people don't realize how sketchy helicopters are. But
never forget it.
And the pilots, dude.
And the
they
pilots,
don't fly.
on top of that.
They beat the air into submission.
Yeah, but you hit a bird, everyone's dead.
You're gone.
Like one bird, just some seagull.
I've never seen this auto rotate down, which is always the
belief.
belief.
In my first helicopter flight, the guy told me, he's like, yeah, you just float down. I'm like, really?
Hey, did you see the drone? It's got like 18 drones on it that you can fly. It's a solo passenger.
The self machine where you basically...
I didn't see this.
It's like a self-pilot. Like you get in as a person for one and you can fly around.
Oh, dope. No,
It is cool, but it only has an
cool.
operating time of like 20 minutes.
Was
I'm
it
like, what good is that?
Is it Archer? Archer has like a personal...
I'll have to go look it up
It's
because
on
I watched
Twitter.
the video. It was pretty
Dude,
cool.
wasn't that badass? I want one.
All right, we got to end this because Kirk's got to get out of here. But appreciate y'all tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed the show, please
And if you
share
want to
it.
get into the crawfish boil, you better sign up ASAP.
Yeah, you got to sign up ASAP. We're going to have a link for that soon. So hopefully see you guys there. We will catch you next week.